Peeps, welcome to another video. Today it is part 4 of the Vogue 9319 sew along, and we're going to be finishing off the trousers and finishing off the entire outfit today. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to be attaching the yoke next. So the first thing it wants us to do is stitch the upper edge of the garment. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to stitch the uninterfaced yoke front sections together at the centre front, and I'm going to be stopping at the large dot, which is this one here. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the facing, because it's you have to do the same thing for the facing, but it's telling you to do it at a later section, a later point, so that you don't, that's when you're going to use the facing, but we have to do the same thing, so I'm going to just do it all at the same time. So yes, I'm going to do stay stitch the upper edge and then stitch the front of the yokes together. Okay, so the next step is to stitch uninterfaced yoke back sections to yoke front at the sides. Interfaced yoke back sections will be used as a facing, so I have done that as well. So this is the front. I have stitched up to the circle, so there is a split in that, and that's so that we can get the point nice and pointy. I've stitched the sides on, I've pressed those open, and then I've also done exactly the same thing with the facing. So the next step is to pin yoke to upper edge of garment, right sides together, matching notches, centres, large circles and side seams, clipping garment where necessary, stitch, pivoting at large circle, trim seam allowance, press seam allowance towards yoke. So we're going to pin it on. You may need, that's why we've done stay stitching around the top edge of the trousers, because we may need to spread it so that it will fit into the yoke. But with the large circle, you want to sew up to that, pivot at that circle and then sew along. So again, I'm going to pin mine and probably sew it and then show you how it's come out. Okay, so I have sewn on the waistband. I've matched up the side seams, matched up the front, and I've pressed the seam up into the yoke of the waistband, the yoke, and pressed that all up, and I've trimmed it down just to the line of stay stitching that I had put in previously. So the next thing that we need to do is install the zipper, and I don't know about you, but I find this really confusing, this one. So I'm going to use an invisible zipper, and I'm going to use my tried and true method of how I do it, so I'm going to show you that. Okay, so I have the top of the zipper tape even with the waistband. I have the right side of the zipper as you sew it up to the right side of the fabric. I've got it pinned in place, and I've got my invisible zipper foot on. This has 2 grooves that will take the teeth of the zip and roll those over to the side so that you can get in nice and close to the edge and make this a truly invisible zipper. And the line of stitching that you want to do is the seam allowance that you've got, so it's 5/8 of an inch away from the raw edge of the trousers. So I'm going to sew in the left hand side as you were looking at it, is if they were worn. So if you're looking at someone from behind, this is the left hand side. Okay, so once the zip is in, I then close the zip up and I make a mark where the waistband is, so that when I'm pinning in this side of the zip to the other side of the trousers, I get a good idea of where I need to be aiming this particular part of the zip for, so that the waistband will match nicely across the seam, or the zip, yes, across the zip. So I'm going to pin this into place, and again, same thing, match the top of the tape to the top of the waistband, and then match up this particular mark, and it shows up better in real life than it does on camera, but there is a mark there, and match that with the waistband on the other side. So it all needs a good press, but that trick generally makes the waistbands meet up for me, and it's done it perfectly on this time. Now if you're following along with me, you will remember that we didn't close up the rest of the back of the seam of the trousers because I wanted to install my zip this way, not the way the pattern recommended. So we're going to have to sew up this remaining part of the back seam of the trousers, because otherwise you're going to get a very chilly butt, and nobody needs that. And also, you know, just decency and that. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, so to sew up the final back seam, you want to have the trousers right sides together, put in your pins. This is where we stopped earlier, and this is where the zip is installed. So I'm going to get my regular zipper foot attached. I'm going to move the needle all the way over to the right, and I'm going to overlap the bottom of the stitching for the zip by about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to sew as close to as I can to this, but I'm not going to be able to get completely on top of it, but I'm going to sew just overlap that by 1/4 of an inch, back stitch there, sew the back of the seam at 5/8 of an inch to meet up with this line of stitching, and back stitch here, and that will be the trouser seam completely enclosed. Okay, so as you can see there, overlapped just barely, gotten as close as I can, back stitched, and then stitched all the way down and gone over the back stitching from the previous seam and back stitched just at the crotch area. So that seam is now all finished and enclosed. So I'm actually going to go press this open, and then I'm going to try the trousers on and see how they are fitting. I have a feeling they're going to need to take them in a little bit at the top of the waist, but I have a feeling they're also going to be a bit tight on my hips currently. Good job I am losing weight. Okay, so we've installed the zipper. I've already done the sewing the facings all together, and I have actually pressed up the bottom edge. Believe it or not, I have. Is that not bit wanting to press up? I'm going to go do that again, but yes, I've pressed up the bottom edge. So the next thing that we want to do is place it pin facing to yoke, right sides together, matching centres and seams, back edges of facing extend, stitch upper edge, trim seam allowance. Okay, so basically right sides together, matching all the things, and stitch. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so once we've sewn the facings together, we want to press everything up. So I'm going to press the seam allowance up towards the facing so that the next step, which is understitching, is easier. So I'm going to go press all of the seam allowance up into the interfaced waistband or facing. Okay, so I have understitched the facing to the seam allowance, and I actually had to clip into the seam allowance to get that to all lie flat whilst I was pressing it, and I've then trimmed away the excess seam allowance as well, so that's much reduced in there. So I have then gone over and I've pressed the facing to the inside of the garment, and I've done that so that there's a little bit of the outer waistband on show on the inside, and that just helps the waistband facing to stay rolled onto the inside of the garment. So the next thing that we need to do is finish off these bits here at the side seams. So the pattern wants you to turn facing to inside, turning ends in to clear zipper teeth, press, slip stitch facing to zipper teeth, press under edge over seam. Well, I'm going to do it by machine because that's how I want to. Okay, it doesn't mention anything about attaching or sewing down the edge of the facing, and with this bit here it just says to press it. It doesn't say to even stitch that up. So I mean, I'm going to stitch it in the ditch. I was going to do that anyway, but it's a bit weird that it doesn't mention anything about okay, hang on. Slip stitch facing to zipper tapes and pressed under edge over seam. Right, okay, so it wants you to basically slip stitch all the way around. I don't want to do that. I'm going to do it by machine because just my preferred method, so I'm going to get started on that. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to fold your facing piece round to face so that the right sides of the waistband are facing the right sides of the facing. And you want to have your two lines of stitching, so the understitching and the seam stitching, rolled over onto the facing side as well. You want to pin that down, and then with your regular zipper foot you want to sew that down to the zipper tape, but close to but not right up against the zipper teeth because you need room for the pull to move. So once you've done that, you're going to want to trim off all the excess. Now before you trim off the excess, turn it through and make sure that everything is sitting in the correct position, because the last thing that you want to have to do is unpick this line of stitching and put it in again if you've trimmed right back to it, because it gets very, very fiddly. I'm not going to trim looking through the viewfinder, I'm going to trim looking in real life because again, I don't want to cock anything up. I'm going to trim off the excess there, and then you can turn this through right round to the right side, give it a little pull on the top of the zipper, kind of want to just pull that through, push everything down, and once you've pressed that, that's going to be a nicely finished zip. So let me show you this side. So we have the we have the waistband, we have the facing. This does have a pressed up lower edge, so you want to move the right side of the facing to the right side of the waistband, and you should end up with something that looks like that. And as you can see here, just about the two lines of stitching, so the seaming and then the understitching, are on the waistband side, and I'm going to put a pin in that and then sew close to the zipper teeth but not right up to the zipper teeth with my regular zipper foot. Okay, so I have sewn with my regular zipper foot close to but not up to the teeth. I have backstitched at the start and at the bottom, so I'm going to test it, make sure that it's doing what I want it to, which it is. So now I am going to trim off the bulk at this bit here so we can get a neater corner, and again I am not going to do that looking in the viewfinder. Here we go. So turn this one through, everything to lie nice and flat. This will need a good press, but if we then theoretically, if we do up our zip, we should have a nice finish at the top, which we do, and then on the inside. So the next thing, I need to get rid of all the stray threads. The next thing that we want to do is sew down the facing on the inside, so that's all enclosed. Now the pattern wants you to slip stitch this in place, which you can definitely do, but I am going to pin mine and stitch in the ditch because I find it's quicker, it's more secure, and I like the way it looks, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so for stitching in the ditch, you want to pin the facing from the right side of the garment through the ditch created by the seam that joins the waistband to, or the yoke, sorry, to the trousers, and you want to make sure that you're catching the folded under edge of the facing on the inside. And once you have pinned it all the way around, you then start your line of stitching at this edge, not too close to the zipper teeth because again you don't want to interfere with those. Back stitch there, stitch all the way around. When you're stitching, you want to sort of gently pull both of them away so you can get really close into that ditch there, and go the whole way around, back stitch at the end, and then you're done. Stitching in the ditch has been completed. I have pressed the waistband, so the next thing that I need to do is hem, and it says on the pattern, finish lower edge of garment with 5/8 of an inch, 1.5 centimeter narrow hem, easing where necessary. Okay, well, I haven't added any length to these at all, and I probably actually need to take them up by about 2 inches because I added length in at the crotch, and I have, as I've told you before, I have a long body and not short legs, but so I'm actually going to hem this by, I'm going to sew a line of stitching at 1 inch. No, I'm going to sew a line of stitching at 7/8 of an inch, press that up and then press that again, and then top stitch that down. So it's going to be quite a chunky hem on these trousers, but that will also give them weight and make them hang nicely. So I'm going to just, as I say, run a line of stitching at 7/8 of an inch the whole way around, press it again, and then top stitch. Okay, so I've sewn a line of stitching 7/8 of an inch away. I have then folded that up so that it's an inch wide and then pressed it. I have then folded that over on itself and pressed it again, and I'm now going to use my blind hem foot because it has the guide on it, and I can run that up against this edge so that I end up with a nice even straight line of top stitching on the other side, and that's going to finish my trousers. If you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comment section down below and I will do my very best to answer them for you. I hope you've enjoyed this whole sew along. This outfit was so much fun to put together and I really like it. I can see myself making more of these, although perhaps not quite so 70s inspired. But you know what? No, I like it. I do like it. So this pattern was chosen by the peeps on my Patreon page, and if you have a look down here you will see all of their names heading across down the bottom there, and again including Mum. I really want to say thank you so much to you guys for taking the time to vote on the pattern that you would like to see in the sew along, and also for your continued support of this channel. It means the absolute world to me, so thank you. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!